What's going on, nation? This your man, Wasted Talent, coming back to you with another short video about Jalen Ramsey. Now, all throughout the offseason, the Raiders have made moves. This has been one of the better off seasons that I can ever remember so far. We'll see once the season gets started. But be that as it may, the Raiders have brought in a quarterback. They've had a terrific draft. Pete Carroll and John Spytek and Tom Brady have all got together and really had one of the more coherent off seasons in memory. And one of the big kind of, concerns for Raider Nation and myself is the cornerback room. Now, the cornerback room was addressed in his offseason. They brought in guys like Stokes. They brought in Lonnie Johnson, some veteran guys to go into, that secondary. Jeremy Chin, and they were great additions, but there is a certain amount of star power that is kind of missing for the purview of Raider Nation, right? And reports out of Miami all season have been that Jalen Ramsey wants to be traded. Now, Jalen Ramsey, the last two trips around the sun, when it came to his free agency journey or him being traded, before he went to Los Angeles and also before he went to Miami, has mentioned the Raiders as a destination that he would really be open to going to, and he's really wanted to go to the Raiders over the years. But it is an unrequited love for the third time, actually, because there's a report from the Las Vegas Review-Journal's Vinny Bonsier that the Raiders are not interested in signing Jalen Ramsey right now. And I quote, Vinny Bonsier said, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, shout out to Vinny B. He was asked the Raiders would trade for Ramsey. And he said they currently have no plans to trade for Ramsey. Ramsey is not on the Raiders' radar, Bonsier wrote. He said Mike Hilton could be someone to look out. Now, Jalen Ramsey would be a humongous upgrade in almost any cornerback room in the National Football League, especially the Raiders, right? And players like Jalen Ramsey are not growing on trees. But if I'm being honest, right, the Raiders haven't had the greatest luck with big name, trades and free agent signings, right? Now Geno Smith is one of those middle of the road, kind of under the radar trades, and I think that kind of work out for the Raiders. Michael Crabtree, guys that we've brought in over the years, under the radar guys, right? I go all the way back to bringing in Derek Burgess, right? Derek Burgess was a very good player, but he wasn't, off the charts kind of free agent move, and it turned out paying huge dividends for the Raiders. But the Jalen Ramsey move in lieu and the aftermath of the Christian Wilkins signing, I can kind of see, and I know a lot of people say, what does one have to do with the other? I think the money allocated for Christian Wilkins is an issue. Now, the Raiders do not have a cap issue, but the Raiders do have some needs, right? The Raiders actually need to address the situation with Colton Miller, right? The Raiders actually need to go out there and keep some younger players that are going to be coming up for deals. Now, listen, the Raiders have put themselves in a situation with John Spytek and actually, listen, Coupon Tom as well, put the Raiders in a position to be able to bring back their players and still be viable in the free agent market. But when you have players like Jacoby Myers, who's coming up with a deal, right? You have a guy like a Colt Miller who's coming up on a deal. I think the Raiders want to keep themselves open and viable right now. When you talk about Jalen Ramsey, right, you're talking about one of the premier players in this league, right? But, listen, over the last few years, some will say that, he's fallen off. Others might differ. Now, to me, Jalen Ramsey had a great year last year. He had 60 tackles, a sack, 2 interceptions. The 2023, he was hurt, with his last year with the Rams, had 88 tackles, 4 picks. The guy's still playing at a high level. He's 30 years old. And if I'm being honest, you would think that Jalen Ramsey would be, a credit to any room that you bring him in, and he would be a Pete Carroll guy. But I have reasoning behind why I think also the Raiders are not bringing him in. And, it's none other than Darian Porter. Now, Darian Porter is, right up Pete Carroll's alley, man. Pete Carroll has always notoriously been a guy who brings in bigger players in his secondary. right? He usually prefers tall cornerbacks, at least 6'1", right? And if you look at the famous Legion of Boom secondary, right, you had guys like Richard Sherman, 6'3", 32-inch arms. Brandon Browner, 6'3", 32 and 3/4 inch arms. Byron Maxwell, 6 foot 1 inches, man, 33.5 inch arms, man. And you know, Akilo Witherspoon, 6'3", 33-inch arms, man. And also Tariq Woolen. And I think Tariq Woolen and Darian Porter is most likely why Pete Carroll and John Spytek and Tom Brady are not going to make that move. And if you really look at it, you know, Pete Carroll drafted Tariq Woolen, you know, out of UTEP. You know, it was a guy that I wanted the Raiders to take. We took Zamir White, and it's okay. But Tariq Woolen has proved to be a damn fine player, especially his rookie year, man. When he was a rookie at 46 solo tackles, 17 assists, 3 fumble recoveries, 6 interceptions in 17 games as a rookie, right? And you can go all the way back to Sherman. You go all the way back to Richard Sherman. I mean, Richard Sherman had a heck of a year as a rookie. You know, so I'm looking at this, and when I think about a guy like a Darian Porter, right? Darian Porter is a guy who exemplifies speed. You know, he rewrote some state track records in high school. You know, came into Iowa State as a wide receiver, has wide receiver hands. You know, and his collegiate journey really hit his apex when he emerged as a legitimate prospect. You know, in 2024. He's pretty inexperienced at the position, but I think that Pete Carroll is really going to lean on Darian Porter. I think they have a lot of faith in Darian Porter, and I think that's a humongous reason why you don't really see the Raiders going out there in free agency and making a move. You know, and to be honest with you, listen, I have been one to say, hey, listen, you know, the Raiders have stars and veterans at every level of the defense. And I'm not saying that the Raiders don't have veterans in the safety room, but in the corner room, I kind of feel like that is something that's lacking, but the youth movement will sustain. It is something that will kind of make or break the Raiders for this season, man. It really will. But if there's any coach that I feel comfortable with a young cornerback coming in and being a premier guy in his you know, off amid his defense, it's Pete Carroll. It's Pete Carroll because listen, when you go all the way back to Richard Sherman, right? Richard Sherman came in the National Football League in 2011, 55 solo tackles, man, a forced fumble, 4 interceptions, 17 passes defense as a rookie. Now, I think Pete Carroll has a pretty good track record of going out there and balling out with rookies. Listen, guys. So once again, the Raiders, from a report from Vinny Bonsier, the Raiders are out on Jalen Ramsey. Some might think it's a mistake. I have faith in Pete Carroll. Would I have liked to see the Raiders bring a bona fide star into the secondary? Yeah, I would. Do I understand the ideology behind not doing that? I also do too, right? And you know, nothing's written in stone. You know, Vinny Bonsier is a guy who is in the building, and but listen, nobody's right 100% of the times, right? Nobody's right, but I think that Vinny got this one right, guys. Listen, if you guys like what you hear, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We are on a road to 20,000 subscribers, guys. That's the metric. That's the mark. Please come along for the ride, man. Wasted talent. We will be back at you all week with content. Been a little busy with real life lately. You know what I mean? Daughter's senior year, graduated high school. Should be graduating in a day. And, you know, after that, it's back at it, business as usual, guys. So listen, do me a favor. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Join the membership as well. The link is going to be in the description. We will be doing some members-only content this week. Guys, have a great and powerful day.